So first, who we are. VLAIO, Flanders Innovation and Entrepreneurship, we're an agency of the Flemish government under the policy domain of economy, science and innovation. And we're actually mainly a funding agency, if you go to the next slide. So we work on a number of topics to foster entrepreneurship and innovation at companies. One of them is in the middle, you see the cluster policy. I'll come back to that later. Does it work like this? Yeah, okay. So as you can see, never mind the big number in the upper right corner. We hope to see that go away pretty soon. But we could say we have annually 270 million of funding going to companies to fund innovation, and about 1/3 of that goes into our cluster policy. And then the other numbers is about direct services and communication and inspiring stories and so on to entrepreneurs. And about 60% of our effort goes towards SMEs, so SMEs is really an important part of it. So coming back to that, the cluster policy, I'm in the cluster department. That's the reason why we came in touch and were interested in the Axel project, because we were looking at ways to improve or further improve our policy in this area, especially since we have a cluster on health and tech, and since health and care is a very important domain in Flanders, as you can imagine. So this is how we came in touch with the Excel project that was already introduced by Sandra, which makes my life really easy. Here the layout is a bit changed, but no worries. So in this Excel project, our initial goal was to see what can we learn from other regions about the cluster policy, and especially demand versus supply, and how to match that, and how to foster innovation that actually brings value, and also move away from the typical medtech where new technologies increase costs, but how can you implement innovations that reduce costs for society? All these kinds of thinking, how can we use our cluster policy to do that? How can we improve that? How can we make SMEs more active? How can we make them cooperate, especially with end users, going to co-creation, living lab methodologies, all this. And one of the tools we used in this project was we called it the OSAT tool. This is actually the Sirocco tool that was the basis for it, to get an overview of where do we stand as a region, what are our strengths and weaknesses, and with that, team up and do trainings and learn from each other. So we did that in Flanders by recruiting a pool of companies, small and large, some health, mainly care organizations, and then a group of, you could say, more networking actors, the living labs, some municipalities, health networks, or cluster, so actors that bring other actors together, and we had them fill in the online questionnaire, and then, most importantly, do the consensus workshop. This is what came out of it, and also where we defined areas where we should work together, or where we could learn things to other regions. As already said, this consensus workshop, and you also mentioned it, there is a lot of value in there. And as a facilitator, we did it ourselves. So Lika Lab, the Living Lab on care, that's in Flanders, and we facilitated this workshop, and then you can bring in this information, like confronting them, hey, on funding, there is something. Also, a lot of participants entered from their own perspective, from their organization perspective, or from their network perspective, so we brought that to the Flemish level. What do you think this means for the region to really have an input towards us, towards policy? What can we do with it? And actually, by doing this, we saw the value of this tool, especially even more than this spider diagram, the report that comes with it, with all the remarks and all the question marks and so on. And we were saying, this has a lot of value. We should somehow try to keep on using this. And the thing is that in the meantime, during the Excel project, last summer, the Flemish government decided on an impulse program on innovation in health and care. That's the schematic of it. So there is a pillar on academic research, a pillar, the central one, on a company, sorry, it's in Dutch, so don't try to understand it. Let me explain it. A central pillar on company-driven R&D, that's the cluster, you could say, and then another pillar on implementation and uptake, and that one is linked to the already existing initiative we have on Flanders Care, with an overarching coordinating steering committee, and with also some financial means that go in there. So we were actually thinking, okay, if we have this is still to some extent starting up. Well, what we learned from this OSAT exercise, why not turn it into something that we keep on using as an input to the governance bodies of this impulse program, and then especially the ones where we have the most impact on and the ones that are more into this demand supply part. So towards, well, first of all, the overarching governance body, but also towards the cluster, towards the board of the cluster. We can impose that to them because we fund them to some extent, and then also towards Flanders Care, can we use this tool to give input to the steering committee of Flanders Care, and then hopefully also make sure that it is better aligned, all these things. And then, yeah, we learned that a lot is already happening from the demand or the implementation side, so we should certainly align what we do. It's two different dimensions, open innovation and goal-oriented care, but still there is a lot of similarity, especially in how do you set it up, how do you make sure you have facilitators and so on. So I guess we will have some follow-up meetings. So this is the story.